This is Ed, and welcome to Porto, Portugal, on the wall there, as you could see. And I took that picture when Joanne and I were there. That's in northern Portugal, and beautiful pottery visuals all over the town of Porto. And that's the Duran River, and the wineries are on the other side. You can't see them. And if you go that way, no, that way, then you go out to the wineries in the back country. Very nice, beautiful. And I want to experiment with different backgrounds, themes of the day, or other things to just add more value and depth to our conversations. Thank you for participating. Well, Stephen, thank you for agreeing to give the keynote address at our New York Global Meeting, 12/12 at HSBC USA headquarters. You'll be there virtually, right? You're not going to fly in?
Well, you never know what I might do, Ed. Come to New York, see the big Christmas tree at Rockefeller Center, and catch a Knicks game or something. We'll see.
Yeah, well, it's 12/12, and the keynote will be at 2:30 New York time.
Got it.
So virtual is okay, but if you're there, it'll be an occasion. All right. So, who wants to go first? Who wants to talk about self-help and celebrating oneself and sanity? Rigo, what's your take on sanity today?
Well, I think I don't have too much to say other than my own habits of taking care about myself. But in general, I consider myself as a healthy person in mentally and physically. So yeah.
Great. Stephen?
Well, my first reaction is sanity is something that the world is certainly missing these days. The old phrase that common sense is not so common. But I think in terms of being less than facetious here, I think particularly in the workplace, I think it's important that leaders, this is a situation where leaders need to walk the talk. They need to show that it's okay to take a mental health day. They need to be upfront with their people and say, look, here's how I handled stress. Here's how I handled burnout. It's going to happen. I read an article last week that 70% of the workforce in the United States has experienced burnout in the last 12 months. And there are personal factors. They're not all workplace related, but people bring that burnout into the workplace, and it impacts results. It impacts how they interact with their colleagues. It interacts with their own ability to do their jobs, and then it interacts with how they take their jobs home with them and interact with their loved ones or friends or family or whatever. So it's an important topic. I'm glad we're discussing it.
Christian.
Well, to me, kind of building on what Stephen said, I was thinking about this the other day. One of it's kind of a pet peeve, but it's even more than that. It kind of makes me angry, is this idea of the boss, particularly male, who never needs a mental health day, who's always working, who's this toxic masculinity of being, I'm more macho than you because I work myself to death, even though, again, no common sense there, right? Typically, there are repercussions. We all know that. The repercussions may be a broken marriage, an estranged family. And I can think of plenty of people I met who would fit into exactly the pattern I'm describing right now. And all for what? Prestige, maybe money, a reputation that you're the superhero in the workplace. As a leader, I think again, I agree with what Stephen says, you've absolutely failed, because you're driving your people, your team to work themselves sick as well. You're modeling it, and you're probably also demanding it. So I've had managers who knew that and who've been very conscious about really saying, here's what I do to not be reachable after hours. Here's what I do to relax. And that to me was far more impressive than, I work even longer than you. I've had these meetings where people were just bragging about how many hours they worked, which to me is just stupid. It's just dumb, because they're not even working for themselves. If they had a business, I would sort of kind of understand that, even though I think it's not sustainable. But to work as an employee, I get by with 4 hours of sleep. Well, for me, it's 3. Well, for me, it's -2. I mean, it's just silly. And I'm not just saying this as a European who is used to more vacation time and a better work-life balance in that sense. And it, of course, cultural, the American Calvinism and all that. God loves you if you work yourself to death, that kind of thing. But also somebody who just knows that it makes no sense. It makes no sense. It makes no sense to be sick and have no family and to be estranged from everyone and to be feared as a leader. It doesn't make any sense. It's on a very rational bottom line, in a very rational bottom line way. It doesn't make any sense.
Christian, I've worked in organizations and I've trained and coached in organizations, and now I can laugh about it. But how many times have I seen people sitting around really not doing anything, quite frankly, but they're waiting for the boss to leave? And it'd be funny to do a video, TV, one of these in the streets type things. But the boss walks out the door, and I swear within 5 or 6 minutes, 90% of the remaining staff walk out immediately to their cars. It's silly to sit around. Literally, they're sitting around doing nothing. They're talking or they're on social media, but they just can't be seen leaving for the boss. And that's just a sad, sad commentary.
Yeah, we're joined by Dr. Natalie Forrest, live from Hamburg. Hello.
Hello, I apologize for being a few minutes late. I had issues getting in, but I'm glad to be here with all the experts.
Everybody has had issues.
You missed earlier when I said moin moin and explained what that meant.
Moin, yeah, genau.
Moin moin.
Okay, what's it mean? Morning, morning?
Morning,
No.
morning.
Yeah, it means good morning, but we only say it in Hamburg, so
So what about
That's
if I say Morgan Morgan?
that does
doesn't
not
make
work.
sense.
No,
Okay.
that does not work. No,
You got
no.
it slightly wrong. It's a good intention, but just slightly wrong. You have to say moin moin.
Moin, moin.
Well, it also, it's just in every region, you have different ways of saying it. Servus, moin, good morning, etc., etc.
We're trying to resend the Zoom link. Oh, okay, here's Ken now. Okay, one second.
Okay.
Good. All right, I can rest. I'm nervous here, up for hours trying to get the darn thing to work. Okay, Ken Lloyd is going to join us from LA. Here he is. Hello, Dr.
Hey,
Ken
hello,
Lloyd.
Ken.
Hello, welcome.
I think I need a therapist after going through all this trouble with Zoom.
Yeah, well, me too. Me too.
And for Zoom to do that
so
on a
Dr.
Monday,
Ken Lloyd,
I was saying for
meet
Zoom to
Dr.
do that
Natalie
update on a
Forrest.
Monday morning
Yeah.
is terrible.
Absolutely.
And the therapist is going to conduct their session with you on Zoom.
Of course.
Ironically enough, yes.
Does anyone have a coach there? No? So thank you so much. It's been months since you've had a moment to do this kind of thing with me.
Yes, unfortunately, yes.
Yeah, that's great. So I sent you an invitational letter, not a Zoom invite earlier today in my day, maybe an hour or so ago, informing you and inviting you to come to the New York event.
Oh, awesome.
Virtually, if you want.
Yeah, I'll check that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Stephen Howard is going to do the keynote, and Ken is going to be involved. Rigo, you're certainly invited. I'll get you on that list.
Thank you.
And I sent that to you, Christian, as well.
And I accepted
Um,
already.
Oh, good, good. I haven't seen that. I've
Yeah.
had some last minute stuff I had to run around here in the last half hour.
Yeah.
Okay, so that is 12/12, December 12, coming up to a month from now. Prior to that, in about 10 days from now, I'm going to stage, and you'll all be invited, I'm going to stage a news briefing about that New York event, and you're all welcome
Okay.
to join, and there'll be
Awesome.
a few from the program also on that call. And we do that for PR, of course, as well as to bring
Yeah.
people together.
Of course,
Okay.
yeah. Awesome.
Yeah, so HSBC, just as a reminder out there, I've been honored to have them be a sponsor, a major sponsor indeed, and host and facilitate my London meetings 3 times already, and number 4 is going to be this spring. But I've also been very fortunate to make good contact with the U.S. leader,
Mhm.
and he's my host facilitator in New York inside their skyscraper, and that will be on 12/12. So it's really a blessing to have that because it's state of the art technology in 29th floor of a 70-story building. So state of the
Nice.
art. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that in itself is action. Never mind our beautiful conference agenda for us. So this topic today is something that I have experienced a lot. In other words, talking to myself, trying to reduce stress, trying to find a way, a new path to handle an old problem. And it's like that guy who in the Greek mythology, Sisyphus or something, that pushed the boulder up the hill and it kept falling down on him. That's me. And and I have to tell you that it worked today. And I'm bringing that up now because I was talking to myself after reading the Serenity Prayer for the umpteenth time.
Mhm.
And not that I'm an alcoholic, although probably approaching that, but not there yet, certified anyway. But just finding a way to ask for help in my own way and recognizing my own limitations, but trying to find a way to understand that somewhere in my vast reservoir of background experiences in marketing and PR and trying to be an entrepreneur without any venture capital. But it's a struggle. And I'm finding though that, and I'll be real quick here, but just to set the stage here for the next half hour or so, the answers are within. We just got to find them and put them together and then apply it. And the answer is breaking down a bigger thing that I thought would be a bigger thing, but breaking it down into small bits
Yeah.
and offering it. And what I'm talking about is the Global Press Club membership thing, a subscription, a consultancy whereby I give people media exposure on a repetitive basis. And you would think more people would sign up for that. It's been a bitch getting people to sign up, but thank you, some of you on the screen, very much for doing it. But the thing is that it finally came to me this morning. I'd say, what time was that? That was, I don't know, 5:30 or so. It was dark here. And what I thought was, I'm going to re-emphasize, buy it for a month. It's $100. and of course I'm using this as a platform right now, but it's just a very practical experience. Rather than try to sell the annual plan, which is pricey, but for some people, it's very pricey. But just to do it for a month, you still get a bunch of services, and it's only $100. And the services are first rate, as I think you all know. So, and I'm really enthused about it. And I started to send it out to my connections list, which are 19,800 and something. And if I get 1% of that, I'll be really happy. And yet that 1% has not materialized in the last 2-3 hours. So I'm wondering what's next. Do it again? Change the message? Yes, Christian.
Black Friday, $85 instead of 100.
Oh, that's a good idea.
You're welcome.
Or
I
actually,
didn't think
or
of that.
Cyber Tuesday,
Yeah, there you go.
which is after Black Friday. That's when all the online sales happen.
Yeah.
Thank you. So let's just talk about something bigger, and I'm going to stop talking. Natalie, I'd like you to take over. I'm dealing with a massive problem that I thought was overwhelming, and what am I going to do, and how am I going to make that payment, and do the next thing. And yet I have people pending contracts that were secured, and they haven't paid yet. So it's annoying, to say the least, and I got to figure out how to solve that problem. Well, this morning I think I did it, and thank you, Christian, for that idea. So people who have more heavy-duty problems, trying to solve life situations, Natalie, Dr. Natalie, is the methodology that I just described, struggled to describe, is that the same kind of thing that you would use to help people break down what seems to be an overwhelming problem?
Very similar to it, absolutely. Because I think from experience, we need to get to two things. One, what is the issue really? And two, what is the origin of that issue? And the latter usually has to do with our subconscious mind. Okay. So for example, when we're not following up, when we're not saying, well, you said you were going to pay by, when we're not willing to make that second call or give a deadline, then usually that is something in our subconscious mind. It might be, how we were raised, that we don't want to appear too rude, etc., etc. So you have to get to both things. And yes, the answer always lies within you. Whether you use a serenity prayer, whether you use the Ho'oponopono prayer, whether you just talk about it and get deeper and deeper into it. Because if it's sort of like with a teacher, if the teacher gives you the answer, it's not really valuable. But if the teacher helps you get to the answer, so it has a lot to do with digging deeper and really, I always like to say, getting to know yourself again, because there's so much stuff on top. So generally, yes. And then there's a bit more, would be my answer.
Christian?
Is it just me, or is he a little bit frozen right now?
You're cutting out.
Would you like to comment, Christian?
Oh, sure. So, yes, I've actually discussed that with my team in my last position, because if you're in relocation and you're a relocation consultant, you have a caseload. And if you don't manage that very carefully, it's very, very easy to get overwhelmed. And when you get overwhelmed, the result is you have a bunch of relocations, maybe way over 100, and you don't really know what's going on with these people, where they're at. You haven't talked to them in a while, and you don't even know where to begin. And a lot of the work I've done with people is to say, all right, how do we break this down so that it becomes manageable again? Prioritize, right? Triage. what's the most important thing right now, then go to the next most important thing. And that way, they were able to come up with a list of priorities and breaking it down, and they slowly but steadily, they got to a better place. And I did this over and over and over again with people. So I know that this works. I'd like to hear from Ken too, though,
Yeah.
Listen,
psychologist too.
I want to apologize. I'm getting a message here, and so we'll try to fix that somehow. But let's continue.
Yeah. Yeah, so
Ken?
Christian just invited Ken. Yeah, Ken, do you want to jump in?
Sure. I think we all want to be more stable, Ed, so it's not a problem. Part of our discussion today. Yeah, obviously, the points that Natalie and Christian made were excellent and spot on. Sometimes when feeling overwhelmed and not knowing where to turn and trying to turn inward, I've also found that it helps to practice mindfulness, which is really stepping back from all that's overwhelming us and get into the moment that we're living in right now. I'm sitting here, I'm breathing, I sense that, I sense what I'm looking at, what I'm seeing, what's changing in what I'm looking at, the sounds that I'm hearing. In other words, turn off everything. What are you experiencing in the moment? And when you see yourself, you feel your brain going back, yeah, but what about these sleep? No, turn it off, even if it's just for a few minutes. Some say it's a form of meditation. There's discussion about that. But the point is that stop, hit the restart button and just get back, get grounded, get that inner peace, and then start again. And that can help you look at what you're experiencing and even digging out some of the causes that may be causing whatever angst or anxiety you're feeling. It's very helpful for anxiety, for depression, for stress management, just to practice a little mindfulness. And this is not sitting for 3 hours a day meditating, but just take a few minutes here and there and slow it down to really focusing on the exact moment that you're in. Nothing before, which can be a source of depression, nothing forward, which can be a source of anxiety, but where am I in this moment? And then use the kinds of techniques that Dr. Natalie mentioned and that Christian mentioned.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, because it is being in the present moment, right? And sometimes I always recommend starting the day out, even if it's like a cup of tea or something, where in the morning, I mean, I wake up and the first thing I do is I listen to a specific song to get me in the right mind. But also when we get stressed, we know that, you know, based on Japanese and Chinese history and philosophy, you know, don't try and work for 2 hours, but do it like 25 minutes and then take a little break. And during that break, maybe step outside on the balcony and be present, as Ken and Christian were also saying, be present in that moment, hear the birds, put the cell phone away, right? Just really breathe in deeply, and that can definitely help with some of the stress. It doesn't take away the tasks, right, that Christian was mentioning as well, but it does take away a little bit from the pressure, you know. But I'm also wondering how Stephen feels about that, since he's talking a lot about the mindset as well, of course.
I totally agree, obviously. The only thing I would add to that, I mean, for our physical bodies, we're always told, stretch a couple times a day. I mean, just, whether, it's just stretching the back, the arms, whatever. I think the same thing. I try and do that little mental break a couple times a day as well, 2 or 3 times a day. And one of the techniques I learned many years ago that I employ is what's called go-to words. And so I have a go-to word called sunshine. And sunshine to me is I can do it right now. I can close my eyes and I can visualize myself on a Californian beach, facing the sun westward, feeling the warmth of the sun. If I really get into this, I literally can feel the breeze across my face, across my hands, arms, whatever. And sometimes I actually go out and do it in the sun. I'll sit in the sun or stand in the sun. I mean, I love going to Starbucks and getting a coffee and sitting in the sun and closing my eyes, and people look at me like, am I falling asleep? But I don't care what people think. So I have another go-to word called waterfall, and I use that when I'm creatively stuck when I'm writing. Now, I'm very fortunate right now. The condo that I'm living in, right outside my porch, is a waterfall at the pool, which has been also very helpful. So when I get stuck writing, I just say waterfall to me, because somehow this image of water cascading down a mountain into a stream and rushing and going, that gets my creative juices going. I don't know why, but it works for me. Now, you have to find your own words, obviously, but those two techniques work very well for me, as multiple times a day, and finding your go-to words.
Excellent. That's great.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Dr. Natalie, what is the song you hear every day that brings you that morning?
Well, I'm going to out myself
Eye of
now.
the tiger.
No, actually, no. In the morning, I used to listen to a very specific meditation, and lately I have chosen to listen to Hallelujah.
The Leonard Cohen song?
Well, yes, the religious Leonard Cohen song, and I usually listen to it either by pentatonics or instrumental, because it does carry a certain vibration, as you very well know. And I don't think you have to be specifically religious, but it gets the mindset into gratitude. And I think, whatever your song may be, but the gratitude, starting out the day with gratitude, I think is absolutely crucial. Just like, in addition to that, I will think about, what am I grateful for? That I have a cat next to me, that the sun is out. So I try to also start with 5 words in the morning that express gratitude. My poor daughter has to listen every morning when I wake her to 5 minutes of a morning meditation, just for the wake up. And then after that, depending on how we feel, whether it's sunshine or something, I think it's just whatever you need at that moment. Yeah, Christian, just talk.
Well, I didn't want to interrupt you. It's just interesting that you talk about Hallelujah, because last week I wrote an AI task about that. So I had to do quite a bit of research. Of course, I'm familiar with Cohen. I'm a Cohen fan, in fact. But one of the things I found out about the song is that Leonard Cohen wrote about 80 different versions of it. He wrote and wrote and wrote and rewrote and rewrote and rewrote. And it's one of the reasons why this song is so fascinating, is that it seems to be something that's almost never ending, because you can take another version and use his words. Don't write anything else. Use his words, but it's still different lyrics. So that was interesting that you brought that one up. I was really just in researching that one.
If you'd like a beautiful sung version, if you'd like to hear it sung beautifully, K.D. Lang
Yes.
sings it
Yes.
beautifully.
Yeah.
And you can just see her whole soul is moved as she's singing it. Yeah, it's a very powerful song. And again, it's almost, as Christian said, the unfinished song, because there are so many different verses that he added. And even when he would do concerts, he would change the part of the words to fit the venue that he was in. I know there's one on YouTube where he was in London, and he changed the word, asked, why I'm here in London. And it's just part of the beauty of the song, and it connects with everyone. And it's wonderful if music can do that for you. Particularly, and you mentioned early in the morning, you get up, start your day, and just get those first steps in peace and in gratitude and openness and connectivity. It's such a wonderful way to start the day. We're all under such stress in this crazy world that we're living in today, that whatever we can do to help in that regard is so great. That's a wonderful, in my opinion, wonderful way to start.
And the other thing I like to recommend to people is to have some kind of a purpose behind yourself. And it doesn't mean world hunger or Middle East crisis or anything. I mean, I remember going through a very difficult time when I was living in Australia and really reconsidering what am I doing and do I even need to stay here? I mean, is it worthwhile continue to stay here on this little blue dot? And funny enough, I was like in the second day of this really moodiness, and I was in a grocery store and I ran into a neighbor. And they hit, Stephen, you're from the US, right? I said, yeah. I says, do you like basketball? I said, I love basketball. Why? I says, our boys coach just quit. Could you coach the team? We only have like 8 games left for the season. Could you? And I said yes without even batting an eye. And I ended up coaching a boys team with neither of my 2 boys are on the team. They were on different teams, and I coached the last eight games, and I ended up coaching my boys' teams for like the next 3 seasons or something. So that 8 weeks of basketball, kids basketball and practice has got me out of my funk. So just having that little bit of purpose, good kick in the backside.
That's a beautiful thing, Stephen. Thanks for sharing that.
Oh, you're welcome. And that's what humanity mindset's about. I mean, I don't want to plug the book necessarily, but
You
part of the
should.
book is all about finding a purpose beyond yourself.
Yes.
Because one of the interesting things is when you have a purpose beyond yourself, and it could be something similar. I mean, it could be Meals on Wheels, where you spend 2 hours a day delivering food to the elderly or something. When you're doing that, you don't have time to think about your own problems. And not only that, if you do think about your problems, it kind of puts them in perspective that, there are these, in this case, elderly people who are dependent on someone to deliver food to their doorstep, sometimes cooked meals, so they can continue. So just, it really puts things in perspective for you.
And look at this picture behind. It's a sailboat, of course. And the saying, you can't always direct the wind direction, but you can adjust the sails.
Particularly when you have port on board.
No.
Which is in those barrels,
Yes.
Wonderful place. Absolutely wonderful. I like it better than Lisbon, although Lisbon is fun. It's a fun place to walk around. And it's really interesting. The sidewalks in Lisbon have that wave look. I don't know whether you recall that the last time you were in Lisbon, the black and white wavy look. And it's exactly the same in Rio. Along the beach, sidewalks are laid out the same way.
Wow.
I don't know what I'm saying here other than sharing my travel experience.
Well, but I think the boat is the boat and the wind and the water. We always talk about, sorry, Christian, to interrupt, but you see like the 4 main what's the word, aspects of life, right? Water, wind, earth, and sky. So if you're on the water, sometimes I think we need to let ourselves just be blown around by the wind and not resist it. So the wind is going to help us, and the wind usually knows where we need to go, and we need to sometimes let that in, just using that metaphor, letting it in. And then sometimes the sea will get a little rough, right? So in a sense, who do you want on that boat with you, and what do you want on that boat with you? And I think that's really crucial, because it's the purpose that sometimes you're finding in challenging times. And so I think the boat, the ship, the sail, sometimes we're not moving anywhere. And those times when there's no wind and the water is also still not moving, those are crucial times for us. We don't like them because we feel like we're not moving, but that's when everything comes together. That's when we sit there and we go, we're now present. We're not diving and multitasking into a variety of things. We're just like present, and things fall into place during those times. It's really, really crucial. But I do want to give it over to Christian, since he had his hand up and I just talked.
No, please. I'm now at that age where some of my friends are either retiring or thinking about retiring. And so it's something that's kind of front of mind as I'm, preparing for probably the last decade or so of my regular career. And the question then is what comes next? And I know what my parents have done. I know what my in-laws have done. And of course, I know many people who just kept on working. But the idea that you get all your purpose out of your regular employment, I'm not talking about owning a company, being an entrepreneur, working for somebody else, that you get all that purpose out of that, and then you retire or you get very ill and then just stops and you have no purpose other than that because you haven't taken the time to think about or reflect about other purposes that you could have, nor have you had time to really look into these interests. That to me is very, very dangerous. I've seen people getting very depressed, or just it shortens their lifespan, worst case scenario, because they have nothing to live for. They don't know why they get out of bed in the morning.
I'm wondering what Rigoberto is thinking about all this, because he is sitting there and he looks like he has something on his mind. What are you thinking?
I'm taking many notes, and I'm afraid, it's a lot of information to process for myself. But what I want to contribute, it's about perhaps personal experience, but it's related with stress in regards of the new way of working, which is working from home. I think this new way of working, from my perspective, especially in big cities such as Mexico City, New York, perhaps Hamburg. I don't know how the traffic is in Hamburg, but Berlin, those massive LA cities have it's go to the office in those places is crazy. You got stressed by default just by going to the office.
Yeah.
On the other hand, when you stay at home, you avoid that traffic. Then you have 1 hour more of your life in the morning, perhaps, and 1 hour more of your life in the afternoons. Because if you switch off at 6 p.m., then that it means that from 6 p.m. you are already in your home and you can play with your children or wherever you want. But my personal experience is that sometimes what it happens is that many employers they may perhaps realize that it is like this way of thinking that they think that okay, you have more free time now, so I can give you more work because you are saving your own time, so you are having fun and you should work more. So they probably want to contact you after working hours, and if you don't switch off, they can keep sending you emails. And just the fact that currently we don't have to turn on the computer, that we can reply an email on the cell phone, and we are workaholics, that we are replying emails at 9 p.m. and we never switch off. But this new way of working, it's like getting me crazy sometimes, because I don't know how to put like this stop right there to let them know that I am doing something else. But this is what it is. I mean, it's the new way of working and where we live currently. That's my perspective, perhaps my frustration, but yeah, this is what is happening in many big cities. Yeah.
And I don't think just in the big cities, the stress, yes, but think about the other stress, if you are, so thank you for that. If you are out in the suburbs and you don't have to come into work, but there's a storm coming and your internet doesn't work, then that's a different form of stress. But it's also because right now there appears to be this 24/7 demand. And that is extremely stressful. I couldn't agree more with Roberto, because that is just like, we have the cell phone next to us. I mean, even the children, they're like looking, and they're not always looking at Instagram or something. It's like, oh, did somebody write me? Did somebody write me? Because they see us parents do it.
The other day, I'm sorry to interrupt this, my last two
Yeah.
comments. The other day, I felt embarrassed because I was writing an email on my cell phone, and then my son interrupted me, and I just let him know hey son, you should learn that when I am typing, you shouldn't disturb me. But at the same time, I thought like, wow, what I'm saying, I am living in two worlds. I should leave my phone and give priority to my son. But I just by default thought that my son should realize that I am busy and I am stressed and I am perhaps my mind it's in another part of the world. And my son, he just want to give me a candy. And it's like, wow. But yeah, it happens.
Yeah, I've got a client, he has a great attitude. On all his emails just before his signature, or maybe it's after his signature, it says, I am sending you this message. I'm going to paraphrase this, but I'm sending you this message at a time that is convenient for me. I only expect you to reply when it is convenient for you. And I actually had an experience with him one time, a couple of years ago, in first week of January, I was on holiday visiting Yucatan, Merida, and I got a phone call from him, and I thought, okay, and I answered the call. We were walking down the streets, and I answered the call, and he says, hey, I need to talk to you. I got this really important project, blah, blah, blah. And he started getting into it. And then he said, hey, sorry, is this a good time for you? And I said, yeah, let me sit down and get a coffee. I'm on holiday this week, but let me take some notes. He goes, you're on holiday? I said, yeah. He said, I'll call you back next week.
Mhm.
And I said, I thought you said it was urgent. He said, it can wait till next week. And he hung up. And even though I told him it was okay to talk, I'm an independent person. If a client calls me, I'll take 20 minutes out of my holiday to talk to a client. But Rigoberto, let me share another story with you because they just spurred a memory here, which I have never forgotten. My boys, when we moved to Australia, they were like 6 and 8 years old. So we'd probably been there a year. My client was in Singapore, 2-hour time difference. I worked a lot, obviously. I traveled a lot. But one afternoon after school, the kids were on their trampoline in the backyard, and I was on our porch throwing a football, an American football, not a soccer ball, but an American football to them. And they were doing their, kids thing, jumping up on the trampoline and catching it, falling down and being very dramatic about it and all this kind of stuff. And the phone rang, and I threw the ball, and one of the kids caught it and he held it. And I said, throw it back, throw it back. He says, the phone's ringing. I said, I'll get it later. And my two boys, their smiles went like this because I knew it was my client, but I also knew that she, because of 2-hour time difference, I knew I could play the time zone and call her back, but I also knew she, wasn't urgent. I could call her back that afternoon. So I spent another half hour with the kids playing with them. And then finally, it was snack time for them. And I went in my office and called my client back. But the smiles on their faces, I will never, ever forget. And I guess they were like age 7 and 9.
And to this day, you relive that.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. Yeah, very
Well,
much so.
And they do too, right? I mean, that's the thing. That's the
Hopefully.
thing. They do too, because they're like, Dad made time for us.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I think sometimes I'm with Rigoberto as well. Sometimes we need to balance, right? I mean, sometimes they're kids, or even my mom, they will just come in and start talking, right? And it's like, okay, I know I can multitask, but can I just finish this email? And then how do I phrase it? How do I say, give me just a moment? Or do I say, I'm not ready yet? I mean, how do I phrase that? Because that carries an energy too. And if I react like, oh, I'm busy, then I might have broken that relationship to some degree. If I try and phrase it, a little nicer, it's like, we now have a sign. It's like, one moment.
Yeah.
Okay. And then, but it's all in that present moment, isn't it?
It is, Natalie, but also, and I'd just like to encourage everyone to change that word from balance to harmony, harmonize your life, because balance is a trade-off. And that's what you're talking about. And that's what Rigoberto's talking about. And that was my experience. I gotta give up work to play with my kids, or I gotta not play with my kids to go do work. But if I harmonize things and if I do things, then that little just one moment and then bring them into the loop and continue that thing, and then finding time when you can put time aside to spend with whomever you want to spend time with. And it's about setting boundaries and, blocking your calendar. And I will sometimes put my phone when I'm with my significant other, and like we go out for a Friday afternoon lunch or something, I will literally put my phone on airplane mode as if I'm on an airplane so that I'm not disturbed. I mean, but you got to be able to have those boundaries and harmonize your life rather than balance your life. Because to me, balance is about trade-offs, and you have to give up something to do something else. And there's always regret involved in the word balance.
Well, that's
Yeah.
interesting because to me, balance is not a trade-off. To me, balance is individual. Because, you know, for some people it's 50-50 because they're thinking about a scale. To me, balance is more about priority. So I appreciate, you know, you bringing in the word harmony, but to me, it's about what are my priorities? And I will spend 80% on my priorities, in my instance, my family, and the rest I will bring in when it fits. But I will always focus first on the family, and that's just a given. You know, that does mean that sometimes boundaries, I don't have to tell my family members, let's talk in 5 minutes or so. Okay. But it's what am I prioritizing, and have I made the message clear to everybody that the priority is you? And right now, you know, I need to pay bills. So let me do this call real quick. No, but harmony is a good, definitely harmony is a good way to phrase it. Yes.
I tell you, this is college education and then some for me. So thank you all.
And
I'm
this
always
one,
I'm always learning from you, Stephen. Tell you that.
yeah, that's what I hope everyone does, not just from me, but from everyone else. I mean, that's what keeps me motivated is I hope that every night I can put my head on the pillow. I think I shared that quote with you a week ago or so, but that I've made somebody happier or smarter or whatever today. And mostly it's not so much happier, but smarter. I'm hoping every day I can contribute to somebody without a doubt.
Yeah, but it's not just contributing to others, right? It's with somebody, I include myself. I want to learn one new thing, every single day, even if it's something minute. But if I feel like I've learned something, and then the other piece that you mentioned, it's the impact we have, right? And it's often that we think the impact we have on others, like I like to smile at people, even on the train, where everybody's like this, I'm tired. I will say good morning to somebody, I'll smile at somebody. And even if they don't react immediately, okay, by me smiling, number one, I feel like I've done something nice for the harmony of everybody. But I also know what a smile, when I smile, what that does in my body and in my psyche. When I smile, it sends a different system as if I'm standing there with my cell phone like that. So I think, overall, when we give to ourselves, we give to others. When we give to others, we give to ourselves. And that's that harmony. That's that, that's the way in which we can, I think, positively impact and resolve some of the stress just by the way that we treat ourselves as well.
Absolutely.
Christian.
I wanted to show you guys something, and I don't know whether you can see it all that well, but what this is it's a komboli. Natalie knows. It's Greek, and I learned what it was and how to use it from my dad, who has a bunch nicer one. This is a plasticky one, but I got it in Greece. And it's related to a rosary, but it's not a rosary. And what it does is it's, a while ago, everybody had a fidget spinner. It's something you can fidget with. So all this time I've been doing this. And it
Does it
just
feel
calms
good?
it calms you down.
Yeah.
It just calms you down. And it's easier to be focused too and listen to what people are saying because your hands are busy, but you don't even realize it. And I have it at my desk, and sometimes I just get it out and take it out and start using it. So a little bit of, if anybody wants something like that, I'm sure it can be bought online for very little money. Helps.
So let me ask you a question about that. Do you, when you touch the beads, are you exercising certain finger muscles, pressing, releasing the pressure, and not just?
No, it's not a pressure ball. It's much more gentle than that. It's much more relaxing than that. It's No, that's a stress reliever ball, which I've also used, and I have one somewhere, but this is just sitting there, you're talking, and that's what the old Greek men do in the cafes. They sit outside and they just play with these things, you know, that's where it comes from. And they're just, you know, having their coffee or maybe even their ouzo, and they just sit there and they just do that and chat.
And it can
Growing
be
up and-
that. Go ahead, Ken.
I just say I remember growing up and hearing about worry beads. Is that
Mhm.
is that what these are also called?
I'm sure it's either related or it's the same thing. The Greek
Yeah.
word is komboli.
Yeah, I remember some of the older folks doing that. And it was calming for them. They have
Mhm.
their worry beads with them.
Mhm.
So I'm sure it's all connected.
Yep.
So-
You know, you got the rosary, you've got the worry beads. You also have, that's why I was showing this, you know, you can just have a bracelet with certain
Mhm.
stones. And, you know, if you get nervous, you do this as well, because in the end, it's about refocusing your mind from too much pressure and input to something calming. And it's very different from the stress ball, as well as those, I think they're Chinese, those Chinese chime balls, where you also then use your hands and you know, you move them around and they have a little certain sound to them. They are also very calming, but can also hurt if you buy them when they're too big and they fall down all the time. But you know, it's like this idea of calming the mind by refocusing a little bit
Mhm.
from all of the stresses. And whether that's with ouzo, you know, I know in Spain they also have it, in Greece, of course. In Italy, they often use the rosary, but that doesn't mean that they're actually praying at that point, you know. And I've seen a lot of women, you know, I think, I mean, I have a necklace on, right? So sometimes you see women just holding their necklace,
Mhm.
right? It's the same idea. It is something that makes you feel positive and calm, and you just rub it a little bit. It can be very, very important, I think. Yeah.
I've got a question on the same vein, but different. Linguistics. That's, please correct me if I'm wrong, Christian, but isn't that the use of certain words in certain situations?
Oh, no, what you're referring to is part of pragmatics, which is a sub-branch of linguistics. And that's kind of what I studied. Within linguistics, I studied pragmatics, and that's about the use of words or phrases. It explains things such as irony, when what you say is not what you mean. But linguistics is a
So
lot of
Steve,
things.
yeah, okay. So what came to mind is with, like, for instance, Stephen, I don't mean to divulge information or anything, but I'm intrigued with you growing up in a household where your dad was a screenwriter in Hollywood, and that's using words and, you know, creating situations that are transferable to an actor acting out those words or making something visual from the written word. And the tie-in that I'm looping through my mind is linguistics, you know, what words to use and in what way in order to paint a
Mhm.
picture. Stephen, would you comment on that?
I think I think all authors do that. Fiction writers. My dad was more of a novelist and a short story writer. I mean, they use words to paint a picture, quite frankly. But I think even those of us who are nonfiction writers, I mean, we use words to create images. I mean, you know, my favorite phrase recently has been, you know, no one wakes up in the morning and looks forward to being managed by their boss. Well, that just creates an air. You know, everyone says, yeah, you're right. I don't want to be managed today. And then, you know, it creates that image in people's minds. So I think that's more phraseology. I've never studied linguistics, quite frankly. But I think also maybe what you're referring to also is maybe it's these pat phrases. You know, like in Australia, the pat phrase is "she'll be right in the morning, mate," which is kind of like "don't worry," you know, everything will be okay. And the other phrases of, you know, "don't worry, be happy." sort of phrases, or when one door closes, a window opens, or when one door closes, another one opens. I think all those, maybe, I don't know if that's where you're getting to, Ed, but those are phrases that we use in commonality to kind of soothe each other, to make each other feel more comfortable with whatever we're facing.
Rhetoric
Well, I'm coming up
also.
with,
The rhetoric.
oh,
yeah.
thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm coming up with that because I want to throw the ball to Ken with a new book coming out about phrases. All right. Tough conversations, phrases for dummies. Though if for dummies means, to me anyway, please correct me and go further, deeper. The dummies are for people who aren't thinking appropriately for the moment.
I don't know if the Dummy series by Wiley wants to get into insults, if you will. I think, when it comes to this particular topic, I'm kind of a dummy. In other words, I don't know that much about it, and I'd like to know more. Now, I'm not a complete fool and totally devoid of any understanding of anything. I think they're really saying, when they in their Dummies line of books, here's some hands-on, useful, pragmatic information that you can apply quite quickly and easily to any number of topics, whether technical or non-technical. Yeah, the book that I did was on performance appraisals, and they had asked, will you put in phrases for this that'll help managers? Because sometimes, what's the right wording to say? I want to comment on an individual's on the quality of work, for example. I don't want to write something that might be insulting or degrading or counterproductive and all. What are some ideas? So the book not only includes how the entire process works, the new process being obviously more forward focused and dealing more with employee career development and growth, but also phrases that are going to actually hopefully help the manager or the leader, if you will, write these phrases. And on the other side, make them more impactful for those who receive them. And whether it's a phrase that's saying, hey, your work was exceptional or outstanding, or it needs some improvement, and here are some possible areas in which some steps can be taken. So it's phrases, but staying away from the cliches and trying to really make the phrases more meaningful for the leaders who write them, as well as for those who receive them.
I knew it. Ken was AI before ChatGPT.
Yeah, but we know, even the expert on AI that Ed has had on some of these programs, she said, watch out using AI to evaluate your employees. Number one, AI is not always accurate. It can, in quotes, hallucinate. And the other side is employees tend to know when it's not really written by their leader, by the person to whom they report. It has a more mechanical kind of feeling to it, a little less genuine. So I think at some point, we're going to be there when AI can do a lot of that, particularly as it builds on the emotionality. But for now, yeah, it's a great tool. It can help. It can help you put together whatever it is that you're going to write. It still has to come from you, from your experience, from your heart, and from what you really are as a human for it to really be useful when putting these kinds of comments together.
Yes.
I want to share this. This is so ironic. Every morning at 10 a.m. on my mobile device, I get a message from the app called Positive. So every morning at 10 a.m., I get a positive message. And this message is so appropriate, goes back to what Natalie was saying. But today's message is, when I love and care for myself, I am best able to be generous to others. So they must have been reading Natalie's words to come up with that.
Well, here AI is watching us. That's great.
Yes. Well, the
this is
NSA is
great.
listening, but maybe Microsoft is as well.
It's that note taker. It's that note taker that's reading our minds in the background.
Thanks for being on the show. Let's
Thank you.
do this again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do that.
Thanks to all of you. Take care.
Thanks
My
to all of
pleasure.
you. Bye.
Ciao.
Thank you. Thank you.